ignoring him will not make it go away. If former President Donald Trump's rally in Iowa last night proves anything, it's that his toxic dishonesty and his potent base remain a major force in American politics in a warped way, sustaining one another. His latest audience in the critical state of Iowa, which recently gave him his highest favorability rating ever. The crowd was soaking up his latest stream of disinformation consciousness.
First of all, he didn't get elected. Okay, forget that. But some people said, oh, sir, it was COVID. Hillary conceded. I never conceded, never. When you hear these numbers of swing states, there was no reason to concede. They should have conceded. It was supposed to be something a little different than make America great. It was supposed to be keep America great. But America's not great right now, so we're using the same slogan, make America great again. And we may even add to it, but we'll keep it. Make America great again, because we already did it, right? We're going to make America great again. Mitch McConnell should have challenged that election, because even back then we had plenty of material to challenge that election. He should have challenged the election. Schumer would have challenged the election. But Mitch McConnell didn't have the courage to challenge the election. He's only a leader because he raises a lot of money and he gives it to senators. That's the only thing he's got. That's his only form of leadership. He should have challenged the election.
Yes, here we go again, sandwiched in between those endless election lies. Trump dropped some serious breadcrumbs. No, it wasn't just the Iowa State Fair food vendors on site. Trump was indeed hinting at a 2024 comeback. We observed Trump in his natural habitat, simultaneously wooing his supporters while marking his territory in only the way he can, and what seemed like an early warning to other Republican presidential hopefuls who, incidentally, may now be growing a lot less hopeful. Joining me now is Trump biographer Michael D'Antonio. He's the author of the book, The Truth About Trump. Michael, first, does it seem clear to you that Trump, he can't resist dropping those breadcrumbs? It used to sound like a grift, and it may still be a grift, but it seems to be a grift moving in a certain direction, and that is running again.
I think you're right. I think he is running again. And one of the things that he can't resist is tormenting everyone around him, except for his fans. So he loves that he's making Mike Pence and the others who want to run in 2024 uncomfortable. This is something he takes relish in. And I think the Hill reported late last week that the majority of Senate Republicans wish he would just go away. And when he sees reporting like that, the effect on him is to encourage him to keep doing this. So he's soaking up the adulation, but he's also reveling in trolling the GOP, at least the part of it that isn't on board with him.
Yes, the trolling is very familiar, and that slogan, Make America Great Again, it doesn't sound like he's even trying, but the signs that were everywhere at this rally saying, Save America, I mean, that is just the most Orwellian thing that I can think of. I mean, America was saved from him after his efforts to overturn the election didn't work out.
Well, he really is kind of babbling and incoherent, but that's what people show up for. So when he says, Make America Great Again, you have to ask, well, if he did it the first time, it really wasn't a very good job. If 8 months later it needs to be redone, it didn't quite stick, this greatness that he gave us. So there's
it's only been 9 months.
Yeah, it's
the
amazing.
Shelf life on the greatness, it wasn't very long, I guess.
No, maybe it was poor building materials. He might have skimped on the construction costs, which he's been known to do.
He didn't pay the contractors again, I guess.
Right.
But there was a telling moment during the speech where Trump says out loud why he talks so much about the election. I like to say this, for as dishonest as he is sometimes remarkably candid. Let's watch.
It's the single biggest issue, the issue that gets the most pull, the most respect, the biggest cheers, is talking about the election fraud of 2020 presidential election. Nobody's ever seen anything like it.
I mean, that begs the question, does he think his supporters are so gullible that he can openly admit that he is manipulating them to get the applause?
Yes, he does think that they're that gullible. You know, there is a game that he always plays of sort of inviting people into his method and saying, "Come on, you're in on the joke, you're in on my act." But at the same time, their responsibility is to give him the feedback that says, "Yeah, we're in on it, and we still agree with you, and we're going to applaud this." You know, it is unbelievable that the guy who actually did concede after the January 6th insurrection in order to indicate that he was a serious man is now going around lying and saying he didn't concede. And he's saying the election was rigged when there's absolutely no proof of it. He's tried every which way he can to get someone in officialdom to agree with him that the election was rigged, and no one will agree because no court and no audit has found any problem. So the idea of saying, well, I'm manipulating you, well, of course he is, and they love to be manipulated. This is a kind of mutual illusion that they all enjoy.
And Michael, when you peel back, when you pull back the Wizard of Oz curtain on Donald Trump, you do find a different story. His company reported in financial disclosures that his Marquis Hotel in D.C. made more than $156 million in income while he was president. But in fact, new documents show it actually lost $70 million. This hotel has been touted as the crown jewel in his real estate empire. But if you go in there, at happy hour on a Friday afternoon, you can hear the echo of your own voice some days. I mean, earlier this year, a CNN employee observed very few guests staying there, and you hear that time to time from people around Washington. How does Trump process things when business isn't booming in the way that he likes to brag about?
Well, first of all, he lies to himself, and then he lies to everybody else. You have to remember the foundational lie of Donald Trump's life is that he's a good businessman, but he's the fellow who went bankrupt multiple times running casinos. And really, casinos, you really have to try hard. You have to be terrible to go bankrupt running a casino because the odds are in your favor every day. So this guy, this former president, the former guy, is going around saying that he made $150 million when in fact he lost $70 million. He's now trying to sell the hotel, or at least the rights to operate in that building. He's knocked $100 million off the price in the last year. So there's no evidence that he's making a profit anywhere. And as the Forbes list concluded, he's no longer rich enough to be on the list. And I think that's got to be killing him. So between losing the election and losing his status as a billionaire, I think he's got a loser brand on him now that has got to be terrible for his ego.
Yeah, Michael, Forbes says that his net worth is still $2.5 billion, but as you said, not enough to be on the list. I think the interesting thing about that article, Michael, is that it said that if he had just divested himself of his assets and had those assets been invested in an S&P fund or something similar that you would do with those types of assets in that kind of a situation, that he would have actually made money. And so by not doing the right thing, he lost money, according to Forbes.
Well, and if he had taken what he inherited from his dad and done absolutely nothing but put it in a mutual fund, he'd be worth far more than he's worth today. He could have spent his entire lifetime playing golf and maybe dabbling in politics and be still on the list. So, for all of his bluster, this is a person who's got very limited gifts, and they revolve around this kind of performance that we saw in Iowa and around the performance that we're going to see for the next 2 years. I think one of the things that we got to keep in mind also is that House Republicans are worried about him sucking all the air out of the room as they try to take over the House in 2022. So this is a man who's determined to make trouble because he can't get off the stage, and he's very much in need of the ego stroking that those crowds are going to give him.
Right, and despite all those problems that you mentioned, I mean, he's still the most potent force in Republican Party politics right now, and he is chasing other contenders out of the picture for 2024. And it's something we're going to have to keep watching, no question about it. He can't be ignored, as we said at the top of this broadcast. Michael D'Antonio, always great to talk to you. Thanks so much, as always. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Jim.